Welcome back to the Backseat Startup Podcast, where we give unsolicited advice to strangers on the internet.
All right, today I'm joined by Austin Kreinz, the founder and CEO of Atomix, a fulfillment partner that helps e-commerce brands grow and scale with their unique fulfillment model. Austin, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Luke. Looking forward to it.
Do you want to add anything to that intro?
No, it's good.
Great, sounds good. So you know the drill. I'm going to share my screen. We'll pull up Reddit. We'll find a question posed by a founder, and we'll bounce some ideas off each other. Sound good?
Perfect. Let's do it.
Great. You might have some good insights into this. I don't know how specific it will be for the e-commerce world, but do you want to double click here and see what this is all about?
Yeah, let's do it.
Great. All right, so I will read it for the listeners. The title is, Got a Big Enterprise That Agreed to Do a Pilot. How can I make it a success? How do you make a success with pilots? We have clear outcomes and they know what the product does. I want to win them over with amazing service, responsiveness, updates on pilot progress, etc. Is there a framework or template you use to make sure pilots convert to recurring customers? Also, as a FYI, we sell B2B and our product is fairly complex. So we're thinking in the future to push pilots first and then try to convert them so we are willing to put all of our efforts into this process. So first I want to ask you, if you do anything like this, like how much time do they get to spend under the hood before they kind of commit to joining Atomix? And if you have any thoughts to contribute to this user?
Yeah, no, definitely some thoughts. So first thought is in terms of a pilot with testing this out, they're like directly how we think about these like technology software app pilots, we don't have any similarities. Now, in terms of piloting and trialing, I have two good examples. One is for an enterprise type of client looking at us for our solution. So since we provide services that are both the physical, so we're storing inventory, we have our warehouse space, and then also the software side, that there's not too much of trialing some of it without going into it. But with a larger enterprise that we're speaking with, they're a large packaging company out of Wisconsin here. They are looking at us to essentially what we're doing with our model within our warehouse here in terms of the fulfillment. They want us to open up our warehouses within their warehouse. So they are a large B2B provider of in-store retail displays. So think you're sending pallets into Target. They want to now work with their brands where they're sending to residential addresses. So if someone orders a razor, that it's shipped to their house. Now, that's not their expertise. They want to lean on us to do that. So we're actually in discussions with them right now. The way that we think about piloting is doing it in one of their facilities. They have 40 warehouses across the U.S. that they plan to open us into 8 of them. And again, the thing with enterprises, it's slow. Like they move a lot slower than startups. It sounds like the cliche, but like they have board of director meetings. So we were meeting with their president, their CEO, and it's just a longer kind of time commitment. Now, the second example is about piloting in a way. So with us being a newer company, we've been around 2 years now. Clients aren't ready to fully move all of their products, all of their inventory to a new partner. So with us, we say, hey, let us prove that we can fulfill, ship, and partner like we say we can. So they'll start, if they have 300 SKUs, so 300 different types of products, they'll start with 30. So one of our partners started with their Amazon business, which consisted of 30 SKUs, did that well for 3 months, and they said, all right, we're ready to move over everything to you. So there are some pilots to it. And I think with anything when it comes to questions around entrepreneurship business, it's less like around trying to template, make frameworks specific for use cases, and more of just do your job really, really well. And obviously there's some pieces to it that I'm missing. There's nuances to the questions, but I think at the end of the day for us, we say, hey, let's do a pilot with them. And as long as we're not extending too many resources where we're losing a ton of money in hope, or like with little hope that they're going to continue with us, it's for us, there's a little downside for us. Like worst case is we're doing that business for them for a set period of time. And if it was terrible, then they leave, and we generated revenue on that. Now it's different from a pure SaaS app perspective, but that's kind of the way that we've thought through it.
Yeah, you touched on the differences between like servicing a big enterprise versus like a smaller startup. But my sense is when I read this poster's question is they're taking it more seriously, or at least giving it a different approach because of like the dollar sign associated with it. Big client, big money, I presume. And I'm curious if you think that approach is the right approach, or if it should be pretty consistent across the board in terms of how you are working with landed potential clients. And again, aside that like the clients have different needs, but should the way you think about it be particularly different?
From a small startup to a larger enterprise, I would say yes. You should think about it differently because their needs are going to be different. So similar to that example that I was talking before of that larger packaging, like enterprise type company, I'm like, for them, I spent hours creating a presentation because I'm now speaking in front of their board and presenting to them. Now, when I work with a founder that is maybe have 2 or 3 employees, I'm going to still create a presentation. It's a little more template driven for those type of deals. Because now if I'm seeing 300 deals that are all in that kind of the smaller side, then it's all right, rinse and repeat, improve, add some client logos to this a little bit. And then now you have this other one that, hey, the outcome of this one could be multi-million dollars for us. The outcome of these other ones are going to be 6 figures typically. So now if we're looking at those two, I think it ultimately goes down to like the feeling that you have throughout of like what's realistic. If you're looking at this enterprise and going into it, you're like, hey, this is a 10 to 20% chance of going through, then I would make sure you're still prioritizing your time accordingly. And that's the same way I talk to our team here. It's like, hey, I don't want anyone else focusing on this larger enterprise deal except myself, because I have the probability of 40 to 60% chance that that'll happen within 6 months. So I think it goes to that of like, just make sure that like you're not getting too high on like that, hey, this is going to go through, this is going to make us. And then when it doesn't, we just always kind of assume like the worst in those scenarios. So you should think about it differently, but still allocate your time resources appropriately.
I'm really glad you touched on that last bit because I was actually going to ask that in the next question. So specifically when they, on the sign off, they said, we are willing to put all of our efforts into this process. I'm really glad you brought up kind of calibrating based on, the likelihood of success, because I was just curious if you have any words of caution for this poster, in the sense that if you put all of your eggs in one basket and it doesn't pan out, especially if you're early stage and, scrapping for that first client, you're months behind where you could have been if you had been a little bit more cautious and reached out more liberally.
Yeah, totally. And that's where it's so interesting with these questions too, because there's going to be so many nuances with where they're at in their growth. Do they have one customer? Do they have none? And this is like, is this their only shot? And like, so that's where it goes to. It's like, hey, if this is their only shot that they have and it happens to be a large scale one, then it's like, okay, you got to put a lot into it because maybe nothing is working on like the smaller client side. So there's a lot of nuances throughout it. And I think that no one knows your business better than like yourself. So if that you go into it and say, hey, this is where my time should be prioritized and I should put all my resources into this, into hopes this one doesn't happen because maybe it'll be that next larger one or you need a larger one, then that's the right moves for you.
Yeah. Earlier on, you threw out a hypothetical where you had like 15% odds of closing. Is that a metric you are like formally tracking, or is it just more kind of off the cuff than that? Or do you actually assign a number value to your potential clients?
Yeah, we actually do provide, and we're getting a little more structure like with our company as we scale here. Our sales team has grown from 0 to 3 people in the past like 6 months. So we have slowly been improving how we look at that because the reality is if we're looking at $1,000 deal versus a $30,000 deal, it's like, hey, we still obviously want to follow up with them and put into it, but I'm going to be focused on those. Either the higher deal or also the higher probability one. So, and I think that the way that you can design that, and again, for us, there's no true kind of 6 steps of how we qualify that. It's more of me being on calls with them and hearing and speaking with them and going off of some feeling, but then tying that number to it. I think whatever is right for like your business, it does help to just kind of realign yourself in terms of where you're spending time.
Mm-hmm. And it also just ties in nicely to the other metrics that you're tracking when you're considering, a potential $100,000 client with a 15% likelihood. You think about that differently than, a $50,000 client with, 20% likelihood of going through. And so that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Do you have any final thoughts to provide to this poster?
No, I think we covered it pretty well.
I think we covered it pretty well. Considered this question answered. You're welcome for the unsolicited advice. Austin, thank you so much for being on the show. How can listeners connect with you?
Yeah, feel free. Reach out to me on any social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. Name's Austin Kreinz, AUSTINKREINZ. Shoot me a message or check out our company, Atomix, ATOMIX, logistics.com.
Great. Austin, thank you so much for being on the show. We'll talk soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Talk soon.
Thanks.
The Backseat Startup Podcast is brought to you by Startup Founder Daily, a media company focused on early stage companies. To learn more or apply to be featured for free, head over to startupfounderdaily.com. You can find the link in the description below.